back to Principles of Engineering. Today we're going to look at designing truss number 2, which you'll see up on your screen. It's essentially 6.5 inches long and about 3.25 inches wide, and it has this kind of funky little 2 double triangle trusses there. So let's go into Solidworks and let's draw that. I think we can remember those dimensions. So we've got Solidworks opened up here already, and I'm going to start a new part. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a weldment. So let's start File, New Part. If you're using the Westwood Engineering default settings, you're going to see over here on the left-hand side some weldment tools which we'll use after we do a sketch. So let's start with a new sketch. So I click on the Sketch button, Sketch tab. Choose any plane. I'll choose the front plane. And I'm going to draw this with that bottom plate, 6.5 inches long, coming up at an angle, dropping down horizontally, coming back up above the origin, back down, and then that horizontal line coming across here. I'm going to apply some of these configurations. So that's horizontal, that's touching, and then start doing my dimensioning. 6.5 inches long, 3.25 tall, 3.25 for this element right here. Already looks like that's defined. All right, we're fully defined. And we'll go ahead and exit the sketch. When I exit the sketch, the buttons become active, and you'll notice this one particular button, which is actually a structural member. That becomes active. Let's click on that. When you load the engineering profile, the standard, it comes with an ANSI inch and ISO. I've added another one in here called custom. And in the custom files, I built some different profiles for tubes that we use in solid pieces. The one we're going to use here happens to be in the type of solid. Then the size is 0.25 by 0.125. Now what that does is it will lay a profile and basically do a sweep along this line set. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to go ahead and start over here on the left-hand side and drop the piece on. And let's look closely at it. You'll notice that it's oriented 90 degrees off. So the first thing I'm going to do is correct my orientation 90 degrees. The second thing I'm going to do is locate the profile. Now you'll see that profile is drawn so that I can locate it on any edge or any center edge. And I'm going to go ahead and choose this edge over here. And that keeps the entire body of the structural element within the size of the truss itself that we've drawn. So there's the first piece. Now I can keep clicking around, and as long as I go conjoining pieces in the same plane, I can keep adding them. So let's do that. What we're going to do here as I do this is I want to be sure that I don't have any edge treatment. So I'm going to go ahead and keep selecting here line paths and drop these around. Now, I'm not really doing any default edge settings here. I can apply corner treatments, but I don't want to do that. So I could make them all mitered corners as an example. I don't really want to do that though, because I'm not going to get the strongest corners if I do that at this stage. So let's apply those, put them in. Let's repeat this. I couldn't add these 2 elements here because essentially the way that the weldment works is they have to be interconnecting lines in the same plane. Now these 2 interconnect. So I can add another element here. It chooses my last default element, custom, solid, 0.25 by 0.125. So I'm going to go ahead and add my 2 elements to my 2 conjoining lines. You'll notice again they're oriented wrong. So I'm going to rotate them 90 degrees. And now they orient properly. Now that's a pretty ugly truss. You'll see that it is, just looking at it, it's got a bunch of overlaps and weirdness in it. So let's talk about how we can make this the strongest possible element. You'll see up here in the cut list, it's making cuts of pieces right now. And you'll see those are common length cuts right now. They're not going to be when we're done. So our next button down here is the trim extend. So let's start out, let's do some butt joints. You can see these are butt joints right here. And what I want to do is I want to select some elements to be trimmed to the to butt up against my bottom plate here. So I'm going to go ahead and choose a butt plate, and the element that I want trimmed here is my upright, and I can only really choose one at a time here. So you see how it changes. So I choose my upright on the left hand side, and then the trimming boundary is going to be, I'm going to turn off extensions, it's going to be the bottom. And now as I zoom in, you'll see whether you picked it correctly. So you'll see pretty quickly how that joint comes into play. So let's go ahead and accept that, and you'll see that I've got my butt joint right here. Let's do a similar item on this end. So another trim of a butt joint, be the exact same butt joint, and I'm going to trim my angle and that bottom. Now you'll see that's a stronger joint than my miter for the way the forces are going to go into this element. So that was easy. Let's do my last one here, this one. And I'm going to trim that again, same idea, against the bottom. But look what happens. It wipes out a whole bunch of other stuff that I want. So I don't really want to do that. So let's talk about some other ideas. Let's do a miter joint up here. So I'm going to do a miter joint between these two elements. I select my trim extend, miter, and I'm going to choose my two elements to miter. And you'll see it forms that miter joint. Notice that this upright element still sticks through that, so we're going to have to trim that here in a bit. So we're in pretty good shape. The last one I'm going to do is I'm going to do a butt joint up here. So let's trim that back. Butt joint. Here's my element to be trimmed. I'm going to trim it against that surface and accept it. So now it's looking pretty good. I got to trim up this inside edge here, and really what I want to do is cut the ends off of it. So if I look at my trim button, I want to turn off this allow extension for a minute. And I'm going to select an end trim. So the body I'm going to trim is this mid piece. Now I'm going to choose a bunch of different bodies to trim it against. And you'll notice that as I start selecting and going around, it starts to give me options about what I want to keep and what I want to throw away. So you see this little element that sticks out? It's saying, hey, do I want to keep it or discard it? So you see how I can toggle that back and forth? Obviously the inside element I can keep or discard, and I want to keep that. So let's trim that. So it really did a nice job there and gave me a nice mitered joint down here. Let's do this last one here. I forgot about doing that as a butt joint. And I actually want to trim this to fit the inside also. So let's do an end trim on that as well. End trim. The body I'm going to trim is this inside piece. And the bodies that I'm going to trim it around are going to be right here. I've already trimmed there, so I don't need to do it again. And there I've got a nice, smooth weldment. Now notice what happened as I cut. As I cut these and trimmed them, they became different sizes, and then they made their own cut list items. So this is really a cool way. This is called a multi-bodied part, and it's made up of all of these different cut list items. I can make a drawing of this later on, and we'll show you how to do that. That would make each one of these pieces give me the exact dimensions. But for now, this gives me a real good layout of how I can build my truss and test my truss. So what I'd like you to do now is to save this. Go ahead and navigate to your Westwood Engineering folder, and I'm going to call this Truss 2. There's my truss. Now, if I wanted to make a scale drawing of this, I could make a drawing just by File, New Drawing from the part. We'll save that for another video. That's how we make a truss using a sketch profile for weldments. Thanks for watching.